In this video, we'll be looking at the string performance database that you can find on the Tennis Warehouse University website. There are 6 parameters that I usually pull up to give me an idea of what to expect from the string out on court. If we have a look and go down, these are my settings. The first parameter is impact duration. The second is impact deflection. Then it's on to stiffness, tension loss percentage, energy return, and then finally string to string friction. I like these 6 parameters because, as I said, they give me a good idea without going on court of what to expect from the string, so almost like a head start. But yeah, I'm going to go through every single parameter, explain what they are, and yeah, we'll go from there. So the first parameter we're looking at is the dwell time, which refers to the length of time the ball spends on the string bed upon impact. And a higher value here usually means more comfort, as the impact is spread out over a longer period of time. It usually means less power, although you'll have to take it out onto court to test and make 100% sure that that is the case. And you'd usually get a higher launch angle as the ball leaves the string bed later during the swing arc. So those are a few things we can expect from a higher value for the dwell time. For strings with a lower dwell time, we can expect a little bit more power. We can expect more shock, so less comfort, and we can also expect more precision, as these strings tend to behave more predictably. Although it is worth noting that if the increase in shock is substantial enough to destabilize your shot, any increase in precision you was expecting is offset by that destabilization. So in the end, you have a setup that is uncomfortable and gives you no control. So the worst of both worlds, and that pretty much is the worst case scenario. Anyway, let's move on to deflection. The string deflection refers to how far the string moves on ball impact. So a higher value here, we can expect a higher launch angle, which means attaining depth on our shot is easier. We can also, in theory, expect more snapback from our main strings. And what I mean by snapback is when the ball impacts the string bed, it dislodges the main strings and causes it to move across the cross strings, and then the main strings will snap back and impart extra spin on the ball. So a higher deflection, in theory, should increase that rate of snapback. However, with more string deflection comes more unpredictability, so precision is pretty much impossible to attain with a string bed that has a higher deflection. If we move on to lower values, strings with a lower deflection tend to launch the ball at a lower angle. So the distance achieved from your shot is, all things being equal, less. Some may find that this is a good thing, especially if you're hitting a lot of shots long beyond the baseline. You might find looking for a string with lower deflection could help you out in that regard. And moving on to the stiffness rating, this refers to the string's resistance to being stretched. So a higher rating here means that more force needs to be applied to stretch the string, and a higher rating usually means we'd have more control and less power. Although it's worth bearing in mind, like I touched on before, that increase in precision, if it comes at the cost of an increase in shock that is substantial enough to destabilize your shot, then you won't have an increase in precision at all. Yeah, it's important to bear that in mind. So strings with a lower stiffness rating, we can usually expect a little bit more power in terms of shot speed. We can also expect a little bit more distance, so good for shots that don't require a full swing, such as volleys, drop shots, blocked returns, and slices to some extent as well. And we can also expect a lower stiffness string to be a bit more comfortable, so those with any elbow issues, wrist issues, anything along that line, it's worth considering the stiffness rating when choosing a string. Moving on to the tension loss percentage, a higher value here will usually mean that the string's characteristics will change rapidly from when you first go out onto court. And it's important to bear that in mind because that can change the way you have to play. And a lower value here means that the string holds its tension a little bit better, so you can expect the characteristics of the setup to hold for a little bit longer. The next parameter I like to use is the energy return. It's not that important on its own, but I use it in conjunction with everything else just to confirm what I felt and observed out on court. And it basically refers to the amount of energy that the string returns to the ball on impact. And the final set of data that I like to look at is the string to string friction, because a lower value here in theory should facilitate greater snapback, which I mentioned before is when the main string slide on the cross string and then snap back, which in theory should impart more spin on the ball. So yeah, that's all the parameters that I like to look at. I like to use the database in conjunction with what I see out on court to confirm my observations, and if there's any improvements that need to be made, which is pretty much every single time, I like to use the table to see where I can go from there. And that is the table that I use from the string performance database. If you think there are any bits of data that I haven't included that should be, let me know in the comments which ones they are and why, and I'll consider including them in future videos. And so that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, we've got another one coming out soon where I look at some of the racket tools on the Tennis Warehouse University. So hopefully see you all there. Until then, take care.